strongly objected to by cabinet. Strongly objected to by cabinet. Sexist, racist, libelous were terms used with regards to the content of them by say peace. And the feeling at cabinet is it was shocking, and indeed it took the cake, as we said, in terms of records in Guyana. Finally, flooding. Government continued its aggressive campaign to reduce the impact of the floods on affected households in the communities, the wards of Georgetown and further afield, particularly on the coast. President Ramatar joined the indefatigable Minister Robeson Ben of the Ministry of Public Works, visiting the affected wards, areas in the affected wards, for first-hand view engagements with Guyanese. Cabinet subsequently approved expenditure that was being incurred by the state and government agencies, by NGOs, private sector commission, city council, yes, the city council, all of whom were engaged in bringing relief and reducing the impact. The restoration campaign is planned to be implemented at a cost of over $56 million that cabinet earmarked for the exercises. The expenditure would finance activities that concentrated on the drainage system within Georgetown and the outfalls, weeding, garbage collection and disposal, and mobile mechanical drainage of impacted areas. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the matters I wanted to bring to your attention. I feel we could dispense with this urge to conclude matters of the opening statement, because it is possible that there are among us those who feel other matters are as or even more important. So let's dispense, and Cabinet Secretary will field questions as they arise. Thank you.
Sir, first clarification on the U.S. aid project. If I understand correctly, you said that while the project was disapproved, there were still some activities.
No, I didn't say that. I mean, you're right to ask for clarification. I didn't say that. my recollection of what I recently said, most recently said, is that there have been, well, let's call it reports. Some might want to say allegations, but they have been repeated reports that activities in the disapproved project are being implemented currently by, and I again, for the sake of clarity, either the U.S. Embassy or the USAID or the International Republican Institute. And as I did say, where else can one turn to for clarification other than those three?
But in these repeated reports, could you say repeated reports of what activities? What
The
specific
activities that are being conducted, captured in the design that you will soon have in your possession of the disapproved project.
Sir, could you be more specific as to which areas of the country some of these projects are being implemented? And in your own words, coming from you at the table, what are some of these elements? I know you talked about the design being distributed, but could you elaborate with us from the table what exactly are some of these elements and which parts of the country?
Well, I wouldn't be able to exhaustively dispose of the question that you've asked, but I could mention from observations, reports made by members of cabinet, activities in regions 3, administrative regions 3 and region 4, and activities that attend to political parties and their mobilization, activities that address components of our population, women, children, those type of activities. But I would want to believe that you might be better informed in your questioning subsequent to your possession of this circulated document.
And these would also include activities involving the governing party.
If it were?
It includes activities involving the governing party as well?
I haven't had any reports of activities involving the governing party.
Sir, Adam, voice, and who do you think of the government with the other one? Not yet, we're going to deal with the one later. Your voice recording in the courts, appeal court, Chief Justice Chamber, and the commercial court. Why only those three courts when such a piece of equipment would be best suited in the courts where there are more trials and the likelihood?
I toyed with that sort of questioning, but when I look at the money, and there's 98,000 for them three, I said to myself, this is a wise attorney general, because suppose this thing bomb out. You know, we Guyanese got a problem with technology. A lot of we got cell phone, we don't know half of the features, we know how to use them. So I said to myself, if this thing here bomb out, and we did buy for all the courts in this land here, there's a big bomb. And this is a profound embarrassment. I could imagine the media telling the poor AG Butters, he better resign in embarrassment. So I think the AG was right. Although he did not come to cabinet saying this is a pilot, Adam right, the amount of code that exists, just to put it in three, you got to get an explanation. And I think there's a reasonable explanation. I wouldn't go down the road and assume that it go work. All kinds of things we assume will work, but for some strange reason, this country here it just doesn't work.
Let me extend this thing like how you got the scanner, and the scanner is mobile, you can move it from one location. Is it likely that pieces of these equipments could be moved to other ports as the need arises?
Man, as me, I can't answer that. Me, I never see it. Me know how it is work. It never been here before, so I don't do the kind of work. So I can't. I would be tempted to say that the 3 courts will be supplied with what exactly is needed to put that system in place. So the notion that they can get spares, they could carry to Hague or wherever, I don't think we should entertain.
Chandra Tribune submit top launch and the rejection of the US aid project. Do you see this in any way influencing the future relations between Guyana and the US?
No, I can't see in a mature situation among 2 sovereign countries. We broke a lance over most serious things. We still make back. So I don't feel that this is an earth-shattering development. As I said to my colleagues, the ball is in their court, and we highly respect convention. Highly respect convention. Let me talk about this thing.
Dr. Luncheon, outside of the press statement, the permission for geographical and geophysical survey granted to Muri Brazil Ventures, could you say, sir, when the invitation for proposals was advertised, could you say how many companies or persons responded, who vetted them, and on what basis this company was granted this permission?
You might better ask that question of the geology and mines, either the board or the commissioner. I don't have the answers to that. I do recognize that an invitation for expressions of interest was made, but the movement from responses to the end point of selection of Muri, I think you will have to go to the commission, where I strongly believe the decisions were made. But again, lest I appear to be more authoritative than I am, I think you need to speak to the commissioner of the Geology and Mines Commission.
Dennis? No, Dennis. Dennis.
Dr. Nanchu, getting back to the USA project, to what extent government believed that the project would have been used to fund activities by the opposition political parties? Was that part of government's consideration to strike it out?
No, the ambassador made it pellucidly clear in, I hesitate to use the word, but in the lengthy discourses that engaged us bilaterally from 2012 to October, when the decision was finally made, that there wasn't in the design or in the intention any such undertaking.
But in reality, do you believe that it has been used?
But well, they ain't got no reality, man. If the man tell me so, you won't tell me. What's the ambassador if he tell you lie?
But you alluded earlier, you said earlier that activities by political parties were part of the process for some of the activities.
No, you asked a specific question about funding. The ambassador very early disabused our minds. He said, "Banners, this thing here ain't got no funding, here ain't no money to nobody." So this issue of funding really wasn't an issue, because, as I said, he disabused our minds. He made it lucidly clear that that was not a feature of this project.
Yeah, the young lady behind.
I don't know if I missed it, Dr. Luncheon, but does the US aid project have a name? And when will this massive restoration project begin?
it has the name, but I don't think the name is fixed. So what I would suggest you do when the opportunity avails itself, which would be at the end of the press briefing, the document I'm going to circulate that came from the Americans would give you the name. It has something to do with governance and democracy and quite a bit of those considerations. But I'm not at this point able to recall a specific name. I know what it deals with. The expectations, what the skeptics at Cabinet and elsewhere have said, that you plan an activity with a finite sum, $56 million. See, but you're in cater for God. Well, I shouldn't say God, but divine. Because I came to work earlier this week, or was it last week? And when I came in, the office nice, no flooding. By the time I was ready to leave in the afternoon, you had about 2-3 inches of water. So the question that we have to confront is repetitive flooding. This 55 million is to deal with what has happened. But I don't believe the divine God told us it ain't gonna happen again. We are sadly unprepared, and captured in this $55 million are some efforts to enhance our level of preparedness. But time and tide and now rains don't wait on man. So I would want to perhaps advise that all things being equal, we ought to consume, we ought to fully expend this money before the end of this month. But I suspect if we were to remain of the same sentiment, and if the same impact were to follow another deluge, we probably could need a couple more $55 million.
Dr. Luncheon, will the government be giving City Hall the $56 million to carry out the work?
Are you mad? Giving who? Look, come straight.
Yeah. I want us to go down the road of this press freedom and who measures the extent of scurrility. You talk about the Depaisa column and you talk about the Tom Clark. Perhaps there were enough signposts to help you to deduce it was the Tom Clark. But I've seen other scurrilous columns. People coming into the country with 4 suitcases of money. Boys who think them is boys, but them is gal. I saw one which suggested that I changed my name to Madam and perhaps I've changed my sex. Who determines the extent of scurrility and what takes the cake?
Well, I am afraid I wouldn't be able to pronounce on that. I have pronounced on what Cabinet feels is pronounceable, this one.
Okay.
Now, if Adam feels,
No, Adam don't feel nothing.
Adam don't feel, okay, well,
Adam feels
yes.
Dr. Luncheon, if I can come back to the question of the permission for survey. There was once a government policy not to pursue mining in that area. Could you say when, how, and why that changed? And as Secretary to the Defense Board, could you say if the GDF no longer objects to mining in that location?
You have touched a very, how should I say, a very serious point. I don't know, and I am uncertain what is the significance you attached. And others too, you're not the first one. So, you know, right, because wisdom flows freely. But what significance you attach, or you are attaching to this GDF input into, how you say, approval. Did I capture you correctly? Approval of the policy? Objections to the policy. Some of these things you don't need to be blunt about, but some of them you need to appreciate. Our civilian military engagement, in which is couched the issue you're raising, civilian-military relationship, is that policy making in these areas isn't dependent on objections and refusals by the military. That is alien to our understanding of civilian-military relationship. In essence, the notion that this civilian-military relationship preserves some right, some influence on the actions and the policy decisions made by the civilian government needs to be examined carefully. They're saying about going to war, you know, if I would want to say, even though some would dispute that, but this is not going to war. This is not making decisions about military science and military disciplines. This is civilian authority on an issue that deals, in this case here, with mining. Tomorrow it could deal with sugar. It could deal with all sorts of things. One must be very careful lest you appear to be suggesting that this civilian-military relationship is so broad, is so expansive, is so amorphous, that indeed there exists a privileged space for the civilian administration, for the civilian government to have to take into consideration in these matters positions by its military.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We'll have to close press briefing here today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to this week's post-cabinet press briefing. Cabinet met as usual on Tuesday, December 17th, 2013, and Dr. Luncheon, head of the Presidential Secretariat and Secretary to the Cabinet, will bring you the highlights Cabinet wishes to bring to the public's attention through you, the media. After completing his opening statement, Dr. Luncheon will entertain your questions and concerns, first on the opening statement, and then, should time permit, on other matters of importance. Dr. Luncheon.
Thank you, Christine, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Let's apologize for being a little bit late, but we try to make up by extending the time to embrace questions beyond my opening statement. Cabinet met on the Tuesday, the 17th, and the agenda for the press briefing today would include, as usual, contracts, Parliament, the USAID project, freedom of the press for what, and flooding. Allow me to start with the contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections to the awards. Agriculture, construction of the hatchery, Ghana Livestock Development Authority. This is The compound in Monroe, Region 4 on the east coast of Demerara, 28.9 million Guyana dollars. 28.9 excuse me, 28.9 million Guyana dollars. Health. Procurement of drugs and supplies for the Regional Health Services, Ministry of Health. 199.4 million Guyana dollars. 199.4 million Guyana dollars. Education. The construction of a teaching block at St. Agnes's Primary School. 29.9 million Guyana dollars. This is in Region 4, Georgetown. Still in education, the reconstruction of La Venture Secondary School. You remember this was destroyed by arson. Classrooms and the administrative section. 25.7 million Guyana dollars. This is Region 3, Canal. Housing and water. Community Roads Improvement Program, CRIP. The rehabilitation of Factory Road and Back Street. This is in Helena, number 2, Mahika. 59.9 million Guyana dollars. 59.9 million Guyana dollars. Sea Defense in Public Works. Construction of 45 meters of riprap sea defense at Hague. West Coast, Demerara, Region 3. 28.1 million Guyana dollars. 28.1 million Guyana dollars. Still with sea defense in Public Works, construction of 90 meters of riprap sea defense, Greenwich Park. This is on the east bank of Essequibo, Region 3. 42.2 million Guyana dollars. 42.2 million Guyana dollars. Public Works, roads, the highway improvement project on the east coast of Demerara to provide for the 4-lane highway, the Lot 7, Diandraj to Good Hope, 498.2 million Guyana dollars. 498.2 million Guyana dollars. Local government. Guyana Solid Waste Management Program. Consultancy services being procured to provide the design for a hazardous waste management facility in Georgetown. The design of a hazardous waste management facility. 200,000 US. 200,000 US. Legal affairs, the supply and the installation and the configuration of the verbatim voice recording equipment to be set up in the court of the Chief Justice, the commercial court, and the Court of Appeal. The Chief Justice, the commercial court, and the Court of Appeal. 98,000 odd US dollars. 98,000 odd US dollars. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections that I wanted to bring to your attention. Parliament. Parliament, the National Assembly sitting, the next National Assembly sitting, scheduled for the 19th, tomorrow, of December 2013. December the 19th, 2013. Every sitting of the National Assembly reveals the additional ways that the parliamentary opposition plans of the parliamentary oppositions are unveiled for public notice and scrutiny. With the leave of the Speaker, the three bills that the parliamentary opposition had refused to approve were allowed to be considered for a second time in the 10th Parliament. Anti-Money Laundering, Combating the Financing of Terrorism Act Amendment Bill, the Firearm Act Amendment Bill, and the Evidence Act Amendment Bill. Guyanese must be aware that the opposition presented with the identical opportunity of considering resubmitted bills inflicted the same fate on those bills as when they were initially submitted. The one that we should never forget, and for which Guyanese will forever suffer, is the Amila Falls Hydropower Bill. Financial Papers 1, 2, and 3 again provided an opportunity for the opposition to display their entrenchedly misconceived posturing that the Parliament performs executive functions in the state of Guyana. A terrible misconception, one that continues to be embraced by the opposition despite court rulings, constitutional provisions to the contrary. Having lost the 2011 general elections, the opposition has resorted to the 10th Parliament to exercise executive powers that the electorate denied them. In their grand design, motions, parliamentary resolutions have been presented as executive fiat, a ploy that Cabinet absolutely and dogmatically rejects. Parliamentary resolutions, parliamentary motions cannot ever replace nor substitute for executive authority. The government policy consummatedly deals with contracts, with obligations, national development policy, the image of Guyana, all of which apparently means very little to the current parliamentary opposition in the 10th Parliament. Recklessness and caprice now characterize their decision-making process. However, a more sinister accompaniment of the opposition's current behavior. This is their refusal to consider, to hear, to listen to the voices of Guyanese. First, they rejected hearing the petition of the private sector commission, if I might descend to the vernacular, not a counterbody, but the opposition rejected the opportunity to hear the voices at the time of their consideration of the Anti-Money Laundering Act Amendment Bill. Now, it's the Cricket Administration Bill and the petition by thousands of cricket lovers in Guyana. Cabinet wonders, and Guyanese should. Can you imagine having unashamedly, willfully adopted this parliamentary behavior in the opposition without executive power? What could we expect if, heavens forbid, this opposition ever again retains, if executive power ever again fall into their hands? What further can we expect? The rejection of the USAID project. Matter was discussed at Cabinet, and Cabinet's contention is fairly simple. There needs to be some clarification provided by either the U.S. Embassy, either U.S. Aid, or the International Republican Institute. What is the clarification? Simply, what do either or all three of these bodies understand the Cabinet's rejection of the project to impose on them? What do they understand that Cabinet's rejection of the USAID 2013 Guyana project imposed on either the embassy and or USAID or IRI? The context in which this clarification is sought is in the wake of repetitive observations and claims that either the American Embassy and or USAID and or IRI continue and are implementing activities under the disapproved project. I've written the ambassador seeking that clarifications, because I'm sure you would agree with me that there are no others to whom the cabinet should turn to obtain that clarification. As undertaken at our previous press briefing, post-cabinet press briefing, on the 11th of December, last Wednesday, has undertaken copies of a design of the disapproved project would be circulated at the end of this press briefing. Freedom of the press. For what? As hallowed as the principle of freedom of the press is considered in real life, experiences remain a powerful tool for fettering the exercise of press freedom with responsibility. Fettering the exercise of press freedom with responsibility. There can be no question about the abuse of that facility of press freedom. History is replete with such abuses. Equally, there can be no doubt that over the years, considerable efforts have been made and continue to be made to render the exercise of press freedom a more responsible exercise. Various remedies have been tried, which, in addition to recourse to litigation, have had appreciable impact. Sadly, there are outposts in the world, in the journalistic world, where anarchy still prevails. And Kaichor News reigns supreme in this regard in Guyana. And even one might hazard a guess, it's a good shot, in the English-speaking Caribbean. While Guyanese have become inured to Kaichor News's excesses, occasional apologies, this most recent one is so offensive that even the tough cringe. The recent Dembaise piece on the tongue clerk, Miss all right, the tongue clerk, sober, is a fit example of the pit into which Kaichor News has descended, and to which the media fraternity has lamely commented and responded. The fairly explicit defamation arising from Kaichor News's depiction of her work was